Hi, and welcome to Nutrition Class 1, Understanding Nutrition and Preparing for Change. I'm Ansley Fay, Clinical Dietitian with the Blessing Health System. Today's learning objectives will include identifying nutrients and their role in playing in health and weight loss, differentiate dietary sources of those nutrients, learning meal planning tools and using MYPLATE guidelines, recognizing portion control, understanding how to balance meals and snacks, identifying benefits of food journaling and how to track intake successfully, and understanding physical activity guidelines. First, I want to review the categories of food and beverages that they fall within, such as carbs, protein, and fats. So those are three nutrients that food makes up of. Therefore, each nutrient and sources within those food groups contribute to calories that we consume. First, we're going to start talking about carbohydrates. So this is our primary source of energy. This is going to be a source that our brain uses primarily, as well as our body. So it's the first choice that our body will use to burn that energy. We need about 35 to 60% of carbohydrates a day from the calories that we need. And some different sources of carbohydrates would include grains, like your breads, pasta, rice, popcorn, cereal, but also your starchy vegetables. So that would include potatoes, corn, beans, peas, pumpkin, butternut squash, fruit and fruit juice, milk and yogurt, and sweets and desserts. Carbohydrates also supply nutrients called fiber, which we need about 20 to 35 grams a day. But they also provide a source of sugar. So it's what kind of sugar that we want to limit, and that's the added sugar. So depending on what calories you need a day, that's going to determine how much grams of how much grams of added sugar you will need based on that number. You're going to find added sugars in a lot of baked goods, honey, syrup as well, so some of your natural sweeteners like that, and a lot of your processed foods. So what carbohydrates are better for us to eat? We call them nutrient-dense carbohydrates. So those would include fruit, dairy, whole grains, and some vegetables like beans, lentils, potatoes, squash, and peas. Carbohydrates we want to limit are those that come from processed foods or refined foods, including those with white flour. So anything like a baked good or white bread, white rice, white pasta. We want to try and choose whole grains half the time when we can, and those more nutrient-dense foods to help us give the maximum amount of energy for the benefit of our health. Another carbohydrate food are non-starchy vegetables, but these have significantly less carbohydrates in them than the previous food list that I have mentioned. So these only have about 5 grams or less per serving. They're known as free foods. They're rich in vitamins and minerals. They're low fat, low calorie, high in fiber, and high in water, which does help promote fullness and can help reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease as well, and keep your bowel movements regular. So some of these options would be broccoli, cauliflower, tomatoes, lettuce, onion, cucumbers, zucchini, jalapenos, turnips, snow peas, Brussels sprouts. So a lot of options that we have for non-starchy vegetables. The next source of nutrient we're going to talk about is protein. So what does protein do for our body? It does help preserve muscle mass, which does play a role in our metabolism. It improves and maintains our nutrition status in general. It helps us stay full and satisfied. So it also helps blood sugar control as well, because it helps slow the absorption of carbohydrates. It supports our immunity, and helps maintain weight loss. How much protein do we need? We need about 15 to 35% of our daily calorie needs. So that could be around 65 to 70 grams a day, but it could be higher depending on some other factors. Typically, we want to aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. We can't typically absorb more than that at one time, as it can be stored as sugar in our triglycerides in our fat and muscle. There are two different types of protein. It can come from animal protein and plant-based protein. Some plant-based options would be more like your hemp and quinoa and soy. Sunflower seeds may have a little bit of protein in them, nut butters, nuts. And your animal sources of protein are going to be more like beef, chicken, pork, fish, that type of thing. A good way to remember different or healthier fats or healthier proteins would be the less legs an animal has, the healthier it is for you. And lastly, we want to talk about fats. So fats do provide the body energy. It supports cell growth. It protects organs, keeps our body warm, absorbs nutrients, and also produces hormones. So many functions that make fats essential in our diet. How much do we need of those? 25 to 35% of our total calorie needs. We typically want to limit the bad fats, which are called saturated fats. And so we need about less than 7% of our calories. So again, depending on how many calories you need a day, that will depend on the amount that you're allowed per day. So for example, if you're on a 1,000-calorie diet, you would need less than 7 grams of saturated fat a day. The fats that we do want to limit are those called the saturated and trans fats. They are solid at room temperature. They raise your bad cholesterol, lower your good cholesterol, and increase your risk for heart disease and stroke. Trans fats are typically a little worse than saturated fats, but they're not going to be found in a lot of products that are more of your fresher products. They're going to be more found in like your processed foods, baked goods, etc. They do help preserve the flavor of food and help give that flavor of food. They are called partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, which you can find in the ingredient list on a food label if there is trans fats in that product. The fats that we consider healthy for us are called monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. These are liquid at room temperature. They come from plants. They do help lower your bad cholesterol and raise your good cholesterol. They're a good source of vitamin E. And some examples are a lot of the oils that we may use, such as sunflower oil, canola oil, olive oil, peanut oil, soybean oil, but also in some solid foods such as salmon, tuna, mackerel, herring, some of those fish animal sources. And then other sources would include like ground flaxseed, olives, avocado, your nuts and nut butters. Those would be other sources of healthy fats. You will not always see healthy fats listed on the food label, but sometimes you will. So try to look for them if you can. Ways to help lower our unhealthy fats would be to use an oil-based dressing on your salads, or replace butter with avocado or peanut butter on your toast. Drink low-fat milk, so like a 1% or skim. Add low-fat cheese to your meals, such as pizza and casserole dishes, on your sandwiches. Use them in recipes, like your cooking oils instead of butter or lard. Using Greek yogurt as a replacement for sour cream or cream cheese. But always to remember that when we are eating fats, we want to try and balance out different nutrients as well. So trying to add whole grains, fruits, and vegetables with our fats is going to make that a little healthier. With meal planning, there if you've seen the MYPLATE guideline, that can help you know what to plan for a meal and even how much to plan for a meal. So it's a really good meal planning tool. And the more we can meal plan, the more we can try and stay on top of avoiding eating out and limiting processed foods and whatnot. There are 3 main messages that the MYPLATE does put out. It helps us understand to balance calories, foods. It shows us foods to increase and shows us foods that we want to reduce. So with the MYPLATE, you'll notice that half of the plate is fruits and vegetables, and the other half is divided into a grain or protein. You'll also notice that fruit and dairy are other options on the side that you can add to your meal. However, if weight loss is our goal, it is a better option to fill half of your plate with those vegetables, still giving you an option to add the fruit on the side, and then dividing that other half of the plate between the protein and the starch. So balancing calories just means to help you enjoy your food but eat less of it. So that's what the MYPLATE is describing when it says balance your calories. And avoid oversized portions. So the MYPLATE does describe or does help you visualize how much of your plate should be made up of each food group. When we balance calories, the best way to do that is spreading your intake out throughout the day. So we don't want to eat a larger meal in the evening or at one point of the day and eat very little the other parts of the day. That doesn't help us stay as full and satisfied. So we tend to eat more calories than what we need if we are either waiting until a meal to eat, like later in the day. So if we're skipping meals, or if we're simply just saving the largest meal of the day at forever what time that might be, such as evening. So we want to avoid large quantities of calories consumed later in the day. So that means we want to include breakfast, we want to include lunch, and we want to follow that MYPLATE method to help us deliver a variety of nutrients into our meal to help us feel that fullness and satiety, so we're not eating unplanned snacks or overeating at our next meal. Speaking of breakfast, a goal that you would want to aim for is 20 grams of protein during that meal. So the closer you can get to 20 grams, the better you're going to feel throughout the day as far as satisfaction. Protein in the morning has been researched to help lower BMI because of the satiety that it promotes. A good way to think of a healthy snack too is including fiber along with your protein. So protein is always you're always wanting to include protein in your meal and snacks to help keep you satisfied. So foods that we want to increase that the MYPLATE is trying to help us visualize is eating more fruits and vegetables, choosing whole grains when you can, hopefully 50% of the time, and then switching to like a low-fat milk, like a skim or 1%. Now that we reviewed the plate method, portion size is kind of that next step to talk a little bit more about. So each section of the nutrients that we described earlier, carbs, protein, and fat, have specific serving sizes that help you stay within that half a plate or 1/4 of a plate. So with the vegetables as half of our plate, that would be about 1 to 2 cups. With starch, that would be anywhere from like 1/3 of a cup to 1/2 a cup, depending on the food source. Fruit would be maybe like a small apple or maybe like a cup of berries, 15 grapes. Those are some examples of what that portion size would be. If we did anything like canned fruit, that would be a 1/2 cup serving. And if we did dried fruit, that'd be about 2 tablespoons. Protein would be about 3 to 4 ounces as that 1/4 of a plate recommendation. So measuring, if you have a food scale at home, that would be a good way to make sure that you're sticking within that 3 to 4 ounces. If you do not, using the palm of your hand would be a good representative to making sure you're sticking within that recommendation. Also, a deck of cards would be a good visual aid to keep on hand so you can compare the amount of protein you're eating at a meal to that size. Fats that you'll notice that you really don't see that on the MyPlate. That's because there's really no recommendation per meal for your fat content, but you can stay within your fat recommendations. So if you want further information for that, you can definitely speak with your dietitian, and they can give you more of an idea of how much fat you would need in a day, so you can use that to plan for your what you will plan for your meals and snacks. Speaking of snacks, snacks are something that can fit into your meal plan. We especially want to utilize snacks when we are feeling hungry, and we don't want to ignore that hunger because we want to be able to make sure that we're able to recognize when we're hungry and when we're full, because when we ignore that hunger, we tend to not understand what hunger feels like anymore. And so we are more mindlessly eating than anything. So a good source of a snack would include a fiber and a protein, like I mentioned earlier. So thinking of protein, so it can come from an animal source or a plant source. So that could be cheese, it could be peanut butter, it could be an egg. And then we want to pair that with a fiber. So your natural sources of fiber are fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. So some ideas of a good, healthy, and balanced snack would be a whole grain cracker and cheese, a peanut butter sandwich, like homemade trail mix, like if you're including nuts and dried fruit, hummus and vegetables like carrots, turkey roll-up, maybe with some cheese, a whole wheat tortilla, maybe throw in some lettuce in there or some spinach, Greek yogurt and fruit, making a plain Greek yogurt dip and dipping it with vegetables, or a granola bar that simply is a little higher in protein and fiber, or even taking like a tuna packet or chicken salad and eating that with some whole grain crackers or a vegetable like cucumbers. So now that we've gone over a little bit about what we should eat at a meal and how much we should eat of that food at a meal, meal planning is something that we can utilize with that MyPlate method. This simply helps you to reduce eating out, so helping to reduce high amounts of sodium, fat, and excess calories to help you stay on track with your weight loss journey. So trying to plan on a weekly basis or even just a few days at a time to help get in the habit of planning a little bit more ahead of time to help you be more prepared so you're not making those last minute convenient decisions. It is also recommended that food journaling be a part of this weight loss journey. It is a proven method to help with weight loss. So some tips that can help you be successful with that include putting a budget on how many calories you want to eat per meal instead of per day. Using a digital food log or like an app that you're always going to have with you on your phone instead of doing it on paper where you might forget it at home or forget to log it because it's in the other room, or whatever that reason may be. Some good apps that I would recommend, which these are just some options that I'm aware of. So MyFitnessPal, Bariatric, Livestrong, MyPlate. Those are some options that you can use to help keep track of your meals. You want to make sure that you are tracking 7 days a week, just because your structure might be a little different from the days that you're working versus the days that you may be off. Weekdays versus weekends might be different. You want to make sure you're measuring what you're eating. So writing down, I ate a cup of this or 2 tablespoons of that. So you are a little bit more accurate with your calorie counting. And make sure that whenever you're eating unplanned meals or snacks, you also write that down. So if there's a carry-in at work and you just took a bite of this or a bite of that, try to remember to still log that and use your best judgment as far as measuring tools to help, write down, was that a tablespoon, a fourth of a cup, or how much was that you ate? Because it does add up at the end of the day. Besides being a proven method for weight loss, food journaling just helps you bring a lot of awareness to what your current eating patterns are. So, are you skipping meals? Are you more hungry at one point of the day? How balanced are you compared to, the MYPLATE method? Are you mindlessly eating? Are you eating out of boredom? Are you eating out of stress? Those are some things that it's just good to be aware of so you know how to make those changes in the future. Fluids and how much we drink for hydration is also very important. So we want to try and drink a minimum of 64 ounces of water a day. We want to make sure those beverages are caffeine-free, carbonation-free, and alcohol-free, and low or no sugar. So avoiding those sugar-sweetened beverages. When we are hydrated, we tend to be more aware of our actual hunger levels. It is very easy to confuse hunger with dehydration, as we do feel hungry when we are dehydrated. So we can easily take in more calories than what we need if we're not getting adequate amounts of water. Some acceptable forms of water could be water in general. You can add things to your water like lemon juice, lime juice, maybe infuse it and soak it in some fruit or vegetables. You could also do a form of decaf tea or decaf coffee. Gatorade Zero, Powerade Zero, Crystal Light, sugar-free Jell-O, sugar-free popsicles. Those are some examples of what an appropriate fluid may be. How we eat can be surprisingly helpful in our weight loss journey instead of just what we eat. So some of us, maybe have really busy lifestyles and we may not realize that we're eating on the go a lot to where we're eating in the car or eating while we're still at work or eating while watching TV. So that distraction can actually prohibit your brain to connect with that hunger hormone to tell you that you're full. So you may miss that opportunity of recognizing that fullness. It does take 20 to 30 minutes for that hormone to reach your brain to tell you that you're full. So you want to make sure that you're slowing down, and distraction can prevent from doing that. We want to always remember to try and eat until we're satisfied, not until we're full. And we want to try and take small bites because that will help us slow down as well. And last but not least, physical activity. So there are different forms of physical activity, and the point of including physical activity besides burning calories is to help preserve your lean muscle mass. Preserving lean muscle mass does help improve your metabolism. If anything, we want to help gain that muscle mass. Exercise can help us maintain that weight loss that we lose and help prevent weight gain. And we must remember that physical activity is something we want to do in addition to what our daily lifestyle is like. So if we are walking every day, all day long, and really active, physically, that physical activity we want to still try and add on top of that. Thinking about maybe days that are a little bit more realistic to do that, maybe on the weekend or maybe on your days off. But it's always going to be in addition to what you're used to doing on a daily basis. You want to make sure you're choosing something you enjoy so it can be more, it can be easy to stick with. So whether it's walking or going to the gym or doing an exercise class, swimming, going and visiting with a personal trainer, bike riding, cycling, all of those things are options of physical activity. So how much physical activity do we actually need a day? So we need either 2 hours and 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity or 1 hour and 15 minutes a week of vigorous intensity activity. And so just to give you an idea of what moderate activity would be, moderate activity increases your heart rate somewhat. Vigorous activity increases your heart rate and breathing to where it is very hard to hold a conversation. If we are short on time, physical activity does not always have to be 30 minutes in one sitting, an hour in one sitting. It can be divided up in however it fits into your lifestyle. So if you have 10 minutes 3 times a day, that is totally fine. If you want to go on a walk 3 times a day for 10 minutes, or do 10 minutes of walking and then later on do 10 minutes of a bike, that is totally up to you, as long as we just make time in our day to help be additionally active than what we're used to doing. So in summary, success to a sustainable, healthy lifestyle is choosing a lifestyle that you can do forever. So trying not to make something short term. We want to make sure we're making this a realistic journey that you can stick with for the rest of your life. We want to try and balance meals using the MYPLATE guidelines. Reading food labels is going to be good, but we will do more review of that in class 2. Planning ahead is going to help. Food journaling, practicing that mindful eating, getting in enough fluids, and increasing your physical activity outside of your daily activity already. And that will be the end of our presentation. Thank you for joining.